Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Plan Commission ARB meeting for June 2nd, 2025. If you have any electronic gadgets, please silence them at this time. Ryan?
Steve Lichtenfeld,
Here.
Bob Denlow,
Here.
Helen DeFay,
Here.
Jim Arsenault.
Here.
Okay, we have minutes from the previous meeting on May 5th. Are there any changes? Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I move to approve said minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. We'll start off with old business. The first one is 63 Arundel Place. And is the applicant here? Oh, okay. We'll start with the staff report.
The project was originally proposed at the May 5th meeting and was continued to allow the applicant to present material samples. The applicant would like to install cedar shake shingle siding, which is not administratively approvable material. Cedar shake shingles are uncommon, but siding is a common material nearby and does not resemble any prohibited materials. Additionally, the garage would have little to no visibility from the street. Staff are of the opinion that the material would have a minimal visual impact and recommend approval as submitted.
Would you like to come up and add anything? No, please come up to the microphone.
Photos of the alley as well to help you all visualize it. I don't know if you're going to see those, but that's our architectural drawing. Okay, so as Ryan said, we would like to use cedar shingles as the main exterior siding material. So our garage is on the alleyway that is between Arundel and Aberdeen, and then it's east of University and west of Des Moines. So we have a design for this. We have received approval from the Hillcrest Board of Trustees for it. As Ryan mentioned, the garage is not visible from the street. In terms of the view from the alleyway, I was hoping to show you some of these photos I had sent. The cedar shingles align with okay, here's a bunch of photos that I took just walking down the alleyway, with the alley's existing character and aesthetics. So the garages along the alleyway are constructed from a variety of materials, including brick, but at least two of those just on our block of those brick ones have been painted white. There are garages that are made from stucco. There are garages that are made from synthetic siding. So that establishes a precedent for material diversity. The other thing about this block is that it's made up of older homes from the early 20th century. So it's really very well known for its natural landscaping, sort of the canopy of mature trees. Unfortunately, the recent tornado took a lot of those trees out, including on our block, which creates, in our view, a greater need for softening and natural elements. The use of cedar shingles helps kind of enhance this sense of organic warmth, which is in continuity with our block's character. The most common fencing along the alley is wood, and I think the majority of those wood fences are cedar. So I think that further supports the use of this material. Cedar weathers very beautifully. It gradually adopts a silvery tone, which really harmonizes with the natural environment and the built environment. And then just in terms of a few other questions that came up last time, we will be constructing a garage door and a roof using very conservative materials and colors. We sent a photo of our neighbor's door, which we will match. I brought some roofing samples, which are going to be closely matched to the roof on our house. And there was a little confusion because the cedar shingle itself, which I brought with me, is 16 inches long. That actually confused me at first too, but that is standard. The way that cedar shingles are installed is that they use an overlapping method where between 5 and 7 inches are exposed, and that's basically the accepted approach. And it ensures durability and weather resistance, and then also that sort of traditional textured material that's associated with cedar. So I brought one shingle, but I also brought a picture from the supplier that we're going to buy the shingles from, where you can see how those longer shingles are layered to get that smaller look that we're all more familiar with.
If you would bring the samples up, so you can speak into the microphone and everyone can see it.
So this is an example. It has a little glue on it because we were gonna try to make a presentation where you could see how they layer, but that is not my forte. So this is an example of one of the shingles. And this is a picture from the supplier where you see in a way that makes them look smaller the way you're used to.
Clarissa, is there a front and back to that shingle?
There is, yes. I can pass the shingle along. And again, the glue isn't part of the look. And then I can also pass along the roof. And this is a few different samples. And the one with the sticker is the one that most closely. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. The one with the sticker is the one that we think most closely matches and works.
So the shingle, the cedar shingle is flat,
Right.
not like what we see in the rendering, which makes it look like smaller.
Well, so what it is it's layered so that it will be a little bit less flat. So if you can imagine what you have in your hand, but multiple of them, and about between 5 and 7 inches are exposed. So the part that goes over the next piece is what makes it have that more textured look.
So it's not layered vertically, it's layered horizontally.
I think it's layered vertically, but I think you would hold it like that. I think that's my understanding. I'm not a builder by any stretch, but that is my understanding.
Okay.
And I think our builder might be on the call and might be able to correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, so if this is the front, the next, it would be installed at the bottom. And then
Exactly. They start at the bottom. I did look that up.
lie over it like this.
With like 5 to 7 inches exposed,
Things like
right?
that.
Yeah. And then the look, the paper in your hand is from the same people who provided that sample. Exactly.
Something like that.
Exactly. And I think that's both for aesthetics, but also it makes it weather better and it makes it durable, which is important because we have,
Well, it
storms.
shed the water a lot better.
yeah, exactly.
And you propose to leave it natural, no preservative or stain?
That's correct because it will weather just like the cedar fences do. So it'll start out looking very brown and it'll gradually lighten as it weathers.
Well, I've always thought most of the garages were brick until I went down there and looked.
Yeah.
And I think this will fit in just fine. I like the design of the doors also, but let's see if there's any other comments. Bob?
I guess I had a wrong impression. When somebody says cedar shake, I think of the rough texture
Mhm.
material, but you're not doing that.
Right.
You're just,
It's exactly this. And I didn't really understand how it was made either. I had to look it up, but it's just like Steve says, they start on the bottom, the pieces are longer, and then they layer them like that.
I personally don't have a problem with it. I agree with Steve. The garage, at least in this picture, is pretty attractive. Cedar fences, since we see them all the time, after a few years, I only have one word for them: ugly. You know, they weathered poorly, just dark, and you could take some polyurethane or something and then make them look new again.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would look into that.
Okay.
But, you know, it's the alley, it's the garage, and I give you a little credit for being original.
Thank you. I would add that our current garage is an eyesore. It'll be a big improvement.
Helen?
Nothing to add.
Jim?
I'll say overall, like, I don't mind the look of a cedar shake, but it's certainly not something that you see in Clayton. I think this is mitigated a lot by the fact that it's in the alley. If it wasn't in the alley and it wasn't blocked, I'd probably have stronger feelings on it, but I don't really see like a strong architectural reason for it to be cedar shake, other than I see you providing a lot of reasons why you want it to be cedar shake, but not necessarily a persuasive architectural argument. That being said, like I said, it's in the alley. It's not really visible from the street, so it's not something I have to cause a big fuss about.
Any comments from the audience? Anyone online? No hand. Okay. Well, you've heard the staff report. We do have a staff recommendation to approve as submitted. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the staff recommendation approving the plan as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. When will we see it? We'll move on to the second and third items, and those are 515 South Central Avenue. Is the applicant here? Oh, okay. Hold on. We've got the staff report first.
Starting with the site plan review, this application was first considered at the April 7th meeting and was continued to allow for revisions to the trash storage and the landscape plan. The height setbacks and impervious coverage as proposed are in conformance with the requirements of the R2 Single Family District. Stormwater will be adequately managed on site. The landscape plan is below the canopy coverage requirement and will require compensation to the city's forestry fund. Staff are of the opinion that the project will meet the criteria for site plan approval with the conditions identified with the recommendations. Staff recommend approval with the following conditions. One, that the applicant shall provide a percolation test report conducted by a qualified geotechnical engineer. The report must assess the performance of the proposed dry well based on the anticipated impact of a 15-year, 20-minute storm event. Should the results indicated by the proposed dry well be insufficient to accommodate the stormwater runoff generated by the event, the applicant shall be required to upsize the dry well accordingly to ensure adequate performance and compliance with applicable stormwater management standards. Then 3, to ensure future maintenance and operation of the dry well, the applicant shall record a deed restriction noting the location and maintenance requirements of the dry well system and shall submit proof of recording prior to issuance of a building permit. And then the applicant shall contribute to the city forestry fund compensatory with the requirements of section 405, 4110 C2A.
Okay, thank you. The applicant, and of course, we're talking about site plan review right now. If you'd like to come up. You'd identify yourself and give us any additional information.
Sure. Good afternoon. My name is Dave Chen. I'm the owner of the property, so I'm not the architect. But what I thought makes sense is maybe what we could do is I'll just recap kind of the 6 comments that I've heard from you last time and how we address the change in the site plan. So the 6 comments that we've heard last time, 3 was from the site plan, 3 was from the architectural review. From a site plan perspective, we've heard that you want us to, add a garbage enclosure, which we agree it totally makes sense. So what we did on the site plan is we added a 5x5 garbage enclosure at the end of the driveway. And then the second thing that we've heard last time was about the landscaping plan. To be perfectly honest, we've gone back. I've gone back to our landscape design firm, and they've tried to add as many plans to kind of improve the canopy coverage. But the fact that the reason why we're so much in deficient was because we had to take out a tree in the backyard. And it's a really big tree, right now that we have to take out. Actually, half the tree it's gone from the tornado. So we try to replace it. We've put a lot more trees around the front and the side in the updated plan. But unfortunately, we still wouldn't be able to replace the canopy coverage from that tree. And then the third thing that we heard from you last time from a site plan was just a soil percolation test. We have someone identified and they can start work as soon as we're ready. do you want me to just kind of talk through the three things for the architecture review as well, or should we wait?
We'll wait.
So I guess with that, I turn it over to Tony, my architect here. If you have any questions for him. I think there's a few things that he wanted to talk through the change.
You know, we'll probably get into that with Tony on the architectural review next.
Okay.
But we need to go through the site plan review and vote on it first.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. I certainly understand and think that all the changes that you've made are rational. The only thing I was wondering, the 5x5 light-proof trash enclosure, can that be right up against the property line?
Yes, we don't have any requirements for setbacks.
Okay. That was the only question I had. Bob?
I don't have any problem approving the plan. I'm just kind of curious, maybe this really goes to the city. With regard to landscaping, it says that his plan exceeds the native species requirement, exceeds the native species requirement with 71.4% native proposed. Is that truly the regulation?
The percent, so that's just out of the plants that they're planting. So our current regulations only require 33% to be a native species. So they're exceeding that.
Okay, but that has no relevancy for approval or non-approval.
Well, similar to the canopy coverage, if they were less than native, then Ryan would have less percentage than 33%, then Ryan would have included a comment that required them to change out some species to increase their percentage of native.
And as we sit here right now, if we approve the plan, the canopy is still not sufficient. And the city is saying that you should tender a little under $1,000 for future planting, I guess, somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Is
fine.
that okay?
Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing we could do, like I said, like unless we put a similar sized tree in the backyard, there's nothing we can do. And that tree is actually bumping against a power line. So when the landscaping firm talked to, I don't know who he talked to, but someone from the city, they actually recommend not to put a tree that close to the power line.
Well, I know there's a lot of places in the city that can use
Yeah, I know.
trees today.
right. And I'll just mention the canopy coverage is not the plant at time of planting. So they are choosing to plant ornamental or medium deciduous trees.
Yep.
So over time, those trees won't grow into a canopy. So it isn't the number of trees, that's this type of tree that they're choosing to plant. And we do have requirements with the height to accommodate the regulations from Ameren. If you plant directly under an overhead Ameren line, we do restrict the height that tree would grow to. But they could plant a larger tree somewhere else on the site that wouldn't be underneath their Ameren line, that would be larger. And that's how you see the majority of the plans that come before you that do comply. Or if they can't or choose not to comply, then you all could approve as it's shown right now with the condition that they pay into the city's forestry fund that helps support planting of additional canopy trees elsewhere in the city.
Ellen?
No comments.
Jim?
I just want to clarify, you are the owner of 515 South Central, but this is a speculative development, correct?
This is what? I'm sorry.
This is a spec home, this is speculative development? Okay, I just wanted to make sure, thanks. No other questions?
Okay. Any comments or questions from the audience on 515 South Central? No? Any hands up? No. Okay. Well, we do have a staff recommendation with 3 conditions. You're aware of them? Do
Mhm.
you agree to them?
Agree?
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the staff recommendation to approve the plan together with 3 conditions, which I understand the owner is familiar with, the percolation test, and if for some reason the water runoff is still a little too much, you would have to increase remedies, okay?
Yep.
And a deed restriction regarding the dry well and contributing to the city forestry fund. Okay,
Yep, agree.
all right.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Okay, we will move on to the architectural review. Dave, do you want to handle it or Tony?
I just wanted to address the three comments that I heard from last time.
First, we have to go through the staff
Yeah.
report.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
I'll just stay up here.
Ryan?
Also originally presented at the April 7th meeting, it was continued to allow for revisions. And the revisions have included a modification to the height to 24.25 feet and a modification of the primary material to gray brick. As proposed, the design meets the architectural review guideline requirements. Staff are of the opinion that the new home will have some visual impact, but will contribute to the broader character found in the Davis Place neighborhood. Staff recommend approval with the condition that concrete paving matches the city standard pour of Merrimack sand and gravel.
Okay,
Okay, so the three asks from last time, one was a 3D rendering. So we've done a 3D rendering to help the board, kind of look at it from a visual perspective, how it would look when complete. And then the second thing, which in hindsight really was a good comment, that the house was too dark. So we went and picked a much lighter brick color that it's really close to the existing structure. So we're tearing down the whole house, but my point is just that the brick color in the current house, it's also pretty light, so it's kind of similar to that.
well, that existing house was a red brick and then it had a white
Yeah,
wash.
it's a very light. I mean, we have a picture in this presentation too for the existing house. It's kind of like, I mean, if it's a red brick to start with, it hasn't been red in a long time. It looks like. So we pick a different color, and then we have samples for for the house that we could kind of pass around. And then the third thing that you've asked last time was whether we have communicated with the Davis Place trustee. And so I've been in contact with them. They've seen all the rendering and the site plan. I actually have a signed form from them for the building and fence permit.
Did they approve it?
Yeah, I have it with me if you want to
All
see it.
three?
Mhm.
Thank you. We appreciate when you address our concerns, and that came across clearly. The house is basically the same house we saw several weeks ago,
Correct.
but the color is startlingly different. I think it will fit in better. I like the use of the black in the recessed entry area. Actually, in a way, it almost looks like two separate buildings on either side of the entry. But I think it hangs together with the roof and everything. It's pretty large. It may be the largest frontage on the street, but it's broken up in different modules. So I feel it's come a long way, and I think it'll be fine. Anything could be better than what is there right now. But
Yes. Actually, the only comment from the Davis Place trustee was it should have been done 3 years ago, but
yeah, if not longer. But
we are where we are.
yeah, so I'm comfortable with it. I think the black windows now show up much better. It was, as you know, I called it depressing when we looked at it several weeks ago because it was black on black on black. And now it has a lot more variety to it. So good. Bob?
I like it. I like the fact that it's not perfectly symmetrical in the front. I like the broken lines. I like the roof lines, as you have multiple roof lines there. I think it works pretty well. So I wish you good luck.
Thank you.
Ellen?
I have a question about the windows. What material are they, other than obviously glass?
I have samples of that if you want to see it.
Is it a fiberglass? Is it fiberglass? No, this would be glass.
Yes. Oh,
But
you mean
the frame,
Yes.
it's fiberglass. I don't believe we allow fiberglass.
I believe that's true.
We actually don't, in the architecture review guidelines, it doesn't prohibit fiberglass windows.
Oh, okay, so it will be vinyl, but not fiberglass.
We don't have a prohibition on the window frames within the architecture review guidelines, which cover this area.
Okay,
We have a prohibition on vinyl siding
okay,
or fencing material, yeah.
okay. No, that I didn't know, so that's why I asked. I like what you've done. Thank you for making the changes. But when I look at your context sketch, it looks so tall next to the two on either side. And looking at your rendering, the distance between the window head and the beginning of the roof, the overhang of the roof, is quite deep. Could that be reduced?
Yes, go ahead.
Tony, introduce yourself.
Tony Camacho, I'm the designer of the project. What was your concerns?
The, above the window head on the elevation, just
The
looking.
mouse here? Grab the mouse.
Yeah, we're currently trying to find your context drawing, so he's moving it. If you want to, if you know what sheet, there it is, Ryan, yep.
Is this, oh, okay, well, that's fine.
Hold on one second, because he's moving it, so.
Oh, right. Okay, got it.
Okay, I realize the context drawing, the center part of the elevation has changed for your latest presentation. But just looking at the height of that relative to 509 and 601, and then you look at the height above the window head to the underside of the roof line, could you reduce that?
Oh, we could have put a gable on it like every other house and made it very towering.
No, I'm
And
talking,
before I had the roof ridge lowered, but nobody liked the lower ridge. So we tried to bring the mass down. That's why we went with the hip roof, so we can tuck it in as much as possible.
yeah,
But I'm sorry, go ahead.
but can you bring that whole roof
Mhm.
down a foot or two?
Well, we wanted the second floor, which is a massive massive. I mean, compared to the first floor, we have a lot going on up there. And we wanted to give it a 9-foot ceiling,
Yeah,
but
but what height is your window at? 8 feet inside?
no, 7.6.
7.6. That's from the top of the window, the operable portion, assuming double hung or casement, from the top there to the underside of the roof overhang is quite a
mean-
distance.
Okay, you mean you're talking about the top of the window to the
Yeah.
bottom of the soffit? Well, per code, yeah, I mean, we need a 12-inch heel to get the proper continuous insulated envelope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you reduce the slope? You've got a 6 and 12. Could you go to a 4 or?
Well, I
5
showed
or
it before
12?
and he didn't seem to like the 4 and 12. So I went to 6 and 12 and I gave it more mass. So I think the mass, the raised ridge, I agree with him. I think it looks better. Because maybe the lower mass is larger, that helps balance it out. But you know, if we walk around the sides, I mean, I really tried to break it up. You know, there's a reason why, if you look, if we walk around the house, you know, if we look at the renderings, I can show you why, but to lower it, I would have to go to an 8-foot ceiling. maybe we could go scissor vault and, maybe, maybe, let's see.
I was the side-by-side comparison picture looks like it was.
Oh, yeah, it was the old one. But as far as, you know, we can scissor vault and then maybe, put a gable end, focus on the window. It would take a lot of work to bring it down a foot.
Helen, could I
Yeah.
jump in a minute?
Yeah,
I know I commented on the 4 and 12.
Yes, sir.
And I actually like the 6 and 12 that you're showing
Yeah.
here, mainly because the middle high ridge, if you go back to the front, there we are. It's so far back, it's going to be foreshortened.
Exactly.
yeah.
So I'm not worried about that.
Right.
But Helen, what you're saying, I agree. It's almost as if the second floor windows need to be 6 inches higher than they are shown.
You know,
Yeah.
you know, it's,
Something,
you know, it's just a rendering. I bet you it is a little bit lower than what's shown, and I don't see why we couldn't make it 8 feet. You know, the window height, 8 feet. And bring it up. I'll just try to see how far I can bring down that heel of the truss and bring up the window. Because I guess what you're thinking, I agree with you. It kind of feels a little top heavy.
yeah.
And yes, I think that's just not the scale, but I'll make sure I address that. I promise. Yeah, I just can't rattle off exactly the inches I can give you right now, but I can address that.
I think it's the visual that is being
Yeah,
referenced
Mhm.
here. And however you do it, it'll show up on the permit drawings.
yeah.
I think that would make quite a difference. It would make the
Okay.
house look lower because
Yeah.
it would not be so top heavy.
Right. Yeah, I'll address that.
And so you're talking about raising the height? Or lower
Only
it?
of the top of the window,
Right.
take it up 6 inches.
And
That would make the brickwork between the top of the window and the underside of the soffit
Yes.
thinner. Helen,
Yes.
that's what you're going toward?
Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
I would.
Like the illusion, right?
lower
Yeah,
and pull down the
Yes.
ceiling 8.6 and then raise the window a bit.
the plate height,
looks-
8'6".
8.6 is a nice size.
You want us to cut every stud. The 8'6", but no, but I think I can address,
I'm not the.
okay, I got it. No, but I got it. I can find out about raising that up and any other illusion I can throw in there. I just didn't want to break it up too much by scissoring it, bringing it down, put a dormer. We want this to be
Yeah.
kind of a clean look
Yeah,
without
it
it being too
looks-
busy.
It looks good. It's just that makes it visually look so much larger than the adjacent. It
Yeah.
looms large.
you raise the window, you're saying you have the illusion
The
or
illusion.
the appearance of the house being a little lower.
Yeah.
That's the point.
And if he could pull 6 inches out, maybe, it just brings it down because still the silhouette is much higher than the adjacent. And they may be considered tear downs
Mhm.
to you, many people, but to the owners, they're not.
Oh, absolutely.
No.
But I think
So-
what, you know, we're building this house at really just the standards, like 9 foot first. Okay, it's a 9 second. But I think what's compounding is that we have an open area where the kitchen, breakfast and areas, and we're spanning that with a floor joist. So we're going 18 inches, so that added 6, you know, but I'll try to squeeze it as much as I can, bring it down.
But what
Okay.
you're saying is the height you have right now is 9 feet
Yeah, 9 foot second.
and you think that's the appropriate height.
Yeah,
And if you reduce the height to 8.5 feet, it's not as desirable.
not at all. It really isn't. I mean, you know how much, I know none of these, our preference or should be driven on cost or profit return. Okay, I understand. But, you know, these homes, what they sell for, that's the least they would expect, you know.
We are seeing more 9-foot floor to ceiling dimensions, definitely on the first floor. We're seeing more on the second floor also.
If the master bedroom wasn't on the second floor, I might even be okay with the 8, but it's a rather elaborate, you know, primary suite and, yeah.
Well, if you look at the stair portion.
Which I
uh,
brought down.
You
I
did
tucked
bring
it
it
as
down.
much as possible.
And we have much less brickwork between the top of the window, the tall window,
Yeah.
and the bottom of the soffit. Now, that might be too little of a difference on the left and right, but somewhere in between, I think,
Yeah.
would work.
Okay.
I mean, to me, 6 inches can't mean that much. And if it makes it more marketable.
Oh,
I-
a
I-
great deal more
I like
marketable.
height myself, but
Yeah.
from a market point of view, it's more desirable. I personally could live with it. I know you're concerned about its relationship to the adjoining.
Yeah, the context.
I'm not,
But let me see, I think that's not drawn exactly correct. I think it can come down further. And I think since I went to a 6 and 12, I think that gutter board can come down. I think it could be a little tighter and I'll make sure we address that.
Okay.
Promise.
One last question, curiosity. You've got the black brick on the second floor in the back.
Yeah.
What is that?
But
There's
just to
no,
give it interest, we're trying to bring that motif around. Just to give it some interest. It could be just all gray brick, but why not have some interest? I think it really brings the bronze anodized color, the soffit and gutter down and it just kind of centers up that window a little bit with the brick on each side of the bedroom window. I don't know, I just think it gives it some interest.
okay, no.
That's
I
all.
didn't know if it was recessed back
Oh, no.
because there's no elevation from that other side that really shows.
Oh, you
that
can you
part.
see it? Can you keep scrolling? Should show it, or maybe
Yeah,
they didn't
But
capture it.
looking from.
Can
the
you see it on the
right-hand
other?
s-
Is it shown? Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's not recessed.
Okay.
It looks with the color because it gives
Yeah.
it depth. And that's another way of breaking up the mass on that second floor.
Yeah, no, that's all.
Jim,
I'm just curious, talking about context, this is a fairly traditional neighborhood. I would say Davis Place, more so than a lot of the neighborhoods in Clayton, seems more homogeneous as far as you see a lot more red brick, a lot more kind of classic design. Clearly, this is an improved plan, but still a vast departure from that. And I'm curious from a speculative point of view, like what's the reasoning for that? Do you think you can get $20,000 more by going with a plain gray brick than a red brick? Do you think you can get more money with a contemporary home versus a traditional home? But I personally am always a little skeptical, especially, I'm extra skeptic. I feel like I hold homes that are spec homes to a higher standard for a neighborhood because when all is said and done, you guys are gone at the end of the day and you guys aren't the owners that's there. So, and this home is going to live in this neighborhood, hopefully for a very long time. And at least to me, it doesn't necessarily fit in with the houses around it. So I was curious what goes into those decisions.
You know what? I wonder, I traveled, been in many cities in this country. I go to, all these cities seem to have like a dynamic architecture, meaning that they have contrast. They have variety. They have like individual expression, But in Clayton, it just doesn't seem to shine through. It seemed like this town, it's an affluent city. They've traveled. It has a love of art, but we want everything just to be washed away. And I think the buyer nowadays, we have a 40-something probably buyer, this is their second home. They want something, they're very image driven. and they're not excited about red brick. And just I mean, that whole neighborhood's full of some aspects that don't make sense, okay? And it seemed to have been pushed through, but just because like, I mean, the homes there, okay, they seem to enjoy their homes, but that architecture and that brick color does not translate well to today's buyer. Go ahead.
Can I add something real quick? So, I think you are, first of all, assuming that I'm gonna sell the house. I'm building it basically as if I was gonna live there.
That's, excuse me, but that's why they're taking a personal interest in that brick from the original brick and this brick, because it was their preferences. Okay,
Yeah, well, yeah. I
well,
mean,
you know, yeah, go ahead.
So, you know, when I first bought this house, quite frankly, I didn't realize how long it's gonna take to build a house. My kids are in Ladue school right now. But by the time we're done, they might actually be done with high school. So there's a chance that I might actually live there. Therefore, my wife and I actually, everything we put in the house, including, I think there's a couple more slide that we've actually, already started picking some of the interior stuff. Everything that we pick, it's as if we are living in the house. So I just don't, you know, want you to think that I'm just an investor, because that's not, I mean, I've never built a house. And then I've also driven around the neighborhood since we last spoke last time. And you're right, there's a lot of red brick house in Davis Place, everywhere you see. However, I would say the new build that's in there, that's probably, I think it's on Polo, maybe not even half a mile from this house. Not red brick, it's similar to that. And the other new build that's maybe 3 doors down from this address, it's red brick, but the design, you can see that there's a. So I guess my personal view is, yes, you're right, Davis Place does have a lot of tradition, but I also do think that some of the new kind of mix a little bit of a newer. Hence we end up picking.
Okay, in that sense, what do you see as the blend of tradition and I guess what drew you to Davis Place in the first place then?
Well, we love the neighborhood. I mean,
Do you love the neighborhood, just not the houses that are in it?
so this is actually, I mean, I don't know how much time we have.
Not at all.
I just sort of drive around Clayton. I mean, I work in Clayton, so I drive around Clayton a lot. I just so happen to see that property, this property for sale, and it's clearly, so I stopped just calling the realtor. At that time, the plan, there was actually an approved plan for this property to do an extension to it. And I said, well, why don't I just buy it? And then I figured. That's what I did. I like the neighborhood because of how close it is to my work and downtown Cleveland, obviously.
Yeah, me personally, I do not have a problem with contemporary architecture, and I believe these neighborhoods, the city, we have to evolve with time, and there's other contemporary houses that are even on the docket tonight. I personally always just want to hear something behind it, like architecturally versus just, these are just choices, and they just seem like choices in this case. Yeah, and I want there to be a reason behind that brick. I want there to be a reason behind these things versus just, here's the brick, here's the roof. It's a contemporary house. That's what, you know, and I feel like if it's owner occupied, typically that comes out more, and I'm not necessarily getting a whole lot of that from, I guess, either of you in this case.
Well, they selected every color, the color of that garage door, that's their, everything. The front door, that's a specific door that they select.
I can assure you that my dining brick samples and everything, I want you, I don't know, 2 or 3 times of different, even with the 3D rendering, different brick color, to try to find one that we think would work with the neighborhood as well as.
Nothing further.
Um, I'll continue what Jim was saying. We are seeing many more contemporary houses go up in Clayton in traditional neighborhoods. In fact, there will be another one coming up in a few minutes later tonight. I think we need to be open to the diversity of this design as long as it has some elements that fit into the neighborhood. Here you're building with brick. You're not doing any odd roof shapes like we see in some other communities around us where they go up and then they're cut off. So I think even though the house is larger and somewhat different than the rest, I think it does have many of the elements that will help it fit in. So I am fine with it.
Yeah, and the only reason why it's hip is because we wanted to keep the mass down. We were trying to be sensitive.
Yeah. Well, you have two gable ends on the north and the south of the house. You certainly didn't need to match that. So with the added height of the house, I think the hip roof is by far the best. Any further comments, or can we move on to the audience?
That's it.
Okay. Any comments in the audience? Nancy, come on up, introduce yourself. We know who you are, but.
Hi, I'm Nancy Yawat. I live in the house next door at 601. So I have a couple questions. The first one is, it's really hard for me to see the windows with the trees covering them. And my recollection of the first drawing was that it was sort of, I couldn't figure out if they were centered or lined up, but there was sort of, it felt a little choppy to me. Mostly in the front.
You're referring to this?
Yeah.
Nancy?
As I compared
Ryan,
the
if you could go
the
back
first-
to
the front row.
There.
I can't see them because of the trees, but the first drawing, they didn't seem centered or something, and it just made, I don't know, maybe I was looking at it differently. I just had a question about that. I couldn't.
What do you mean is or is not centered? Is it the
The second,
trees?
I can't figure out where the second floor windows are compared to the first floor windows. In some of them, this, I guess, looks like they're more centered. The first drawing that I saw looked really choppy, and I couldn't see it because of the trees this time. Okay,
Front.
okay,
Now, I could go through the sides and the rear and inform you that we put in a better alignment, stacking windows better.
okay.
Please,
On this
Yeah.
one?
just come up to the microphone, otherwise
Okay.
it won't be heard online.
Okay, because it stood out to me in the first rendering, so if this is a better rendering, that's helpful.
Nancy, talking about the windows, referring to the bay where the stairway is, those windows do not line up with either the first or the second floor because the stairway, it's a scissor stair coming up and then back, and the landing is in between the first and second floor.
I don't mean the top of them, I mean, when you're comparing it, the second floor and the first floor, are they centered, or it looked very choppy, the first drawing I saw, and I just.
Tony, come on, when,
Yeah. Do you know what I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
I
Okay,
think it was the sides and the one side that was facing you. Can we?
no, I don't, it was the front, it wasn't the sides, it
Well,
was
the
the
front, all those openings are exactly the same.
Okay, well then,
But the side that faces you,
yeah,
and I think people mentioned, they brought up that they wanted the windows to better align. If you look at the rendering,
Mhm.
they all perfectly align
okay,
at the sides.
and
Look at this, the sides, yeah. Yeah, they
well,
all,
I'm on the other side actually, but,
okay, well, yeah, go to the other side.
I
They
mean,
all-
not that I don't care about this side, but,
Well, the front is the same.
Okay.
It just maybe.
All right. I just wanted to
looks
bring that up.
familiar.
If the first drawing to me, something really stood out. But as long as
Yes.
they're centered, that's fine. The second,
While we're still on windows.
yeah,
Let me address Tony. If you look at this, the first and second floor windows are offset.
yeah,
Which one?
they are.
See this? If you
Oh,
take the,
That's their rendering. It's just off.
well,
it's
we
better.
expect the rendering to
Yeah.
represent what.
It's
we-
all, it's off, it,
The actual-
It's still off.
it's offset in
It's
that drawing
off.
too, yes.
Yeah. Good.
But you brought that- Well, it was meant to be centered.
Well, we will want it
Well, it
centered.
works.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, Nancy.
That's okay. No, I appreciate you acknowledging what I'm talking about. Okay, the second question I have is, there's a lot of concrete in the front and the back, and I don't understand why there's so much concrete, especially in back, when there's an issue with not enough tree coverage. What is all this, what is all this concrete? I've never seen so much.
Don't think that concrete goes straight across. I don't know, I don't think
I mean,
that isn't.
I feel like trees
Can
should
we
be
look
there
at
if
the-
there's concrete.
Yeah, just for the record, we will use the site plan that was approved, the civil site plans. Renderings, because the renderings are often not made by the architect themselves, so they tend to have
I can't read that.
inconsistencies with the
Okay.
flat area.
Okay, well, I'm
Can I-
just,
Can I help you?
yeah, but can I just
Okay, go
tell you
ahead.
where I'm coming from?
Sure.
Okay, so I've been living next door to this house and I've seen almost every tree come down in this property. And they used to be, it was a gorgeous garden, it was gorgeous trees, and now everything's gone. So I'm really protective of the trees because I know at one point I was told, you know, you have to replace the trees with what were there. And I brought this up last time when I was on Zoom, and I said, you know, how are these trees going to be replaced? I mean, there's a lot of trees. So that's why I'm so sensitive to all of this concrete in front and back. I just wanted to explain where I'm coming from, just as I've watched what's going on with this house.
We do have one other rendering.
Okay,
Ryan, if you could go, I think it was the back of the house rendering. Oh,
Can I
well,
use
that one does show.
it's
uh,
like,
I-
what, yeah, there's a lot of
Can I-
Tony,
concrete.
please hold on.
Okay, I was just trying to.
There, okay.
Okay,
That cuts the concrete virtually.
okay,
in
I mean, I've
half.
just never seen so much concrete.
Yeah.
That's why it stood out to me.
Well, as Anna
Yeah,
indicated, it will be done as the approved site plan.
okay,
And the site plan corresponds with this rendering.
okay. Thank you. And my third question is, has there been any discussion about the fences that will be there, or is that not something that you discuss in these meetings? Since I mean, yeah, and or the materials, or, I mean, they had a beautiful fence before it got torn down.
Well, I think we all realize that for several years that house had lack of maintenance.
But is the fence material something you discuss in this meeting or not?
We can ask Tony to
Yeah,
describe
and just
it.
what your plans are for the fence,
We haven't. picked up the-
Please come up to the microphone.
like, sit down.
Nancy, we haven't picked out material for the fences, but we know that we need to obviously have fences around the house.
That has to be mutually approved, right?
Does that need to get approved here?
Well, we don't see it here. It will have to be approved at one point, yes. And of course, you know, you're on a public walkway
Yes.
on the south side of your property, so having it fenced probably would be to your benefit.
Agree.
Just to clarify though, Steve, fences that conform with our material requirements, so if they're made from wood or a composite or aluminum, they would not come back to this board for approval. That's an administrative approval.
Thank you.
I think there's also a fence permit that I need to get, right?
So a building permit is required. So if you've determined the fence material at the time of the building permit for your new house, then you could include it at that point. Otherwise, you would have to either do an amendment to that building permit later to include the fence, or you would get a separate building permit for a fence.
Okay. Sure, come on back up.
Air conditioner is. On which side? Okay.
Which is actually further back, Nancy, than where the unit is right now on the
Okay.
house.
Okay. Well, it's right next to the house now.
It is in front of the fence.
So this location is roughly near the edge of the back edge of your driveway,
Got it.
as opposed to
Okay,
right next to the
got
side
it.
of your house.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? No? No hands up, I would assume. Okay. Any further comments from the commission? No? We do have a staff recommendation to approve with the condition that concrete paving matches the city standard pour of Merrimack sand and gravel. Are you in agreement? Okay, I do have one other question. I don't see any architectural seals on any of the drawings. But we assume there will be? Okay. Okay,
Yeah, it will be required before the building permit wouldn't be issued without that.
right. Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move that we adopt the staff recommendation approving the plans with a condition that concrete paving matches the city standard pour of Merrimack sand and gravel.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay. Ryan, did you get that? Okay. Okay,
Great,
Thank you. Okay, we'll go on to new business now. The first item is 7923 Forsyth. Is the applicant here? Or, let's see. Hmm.
If there's anyone online that is here on behalf of this project, can you raise your hand?
Well, we will go on. We can come back to this later. Let's move on to 7474 York Drive. Is the applicant here?
Hello?
Yes. Do you hear us, John?
Yes, do you hear me?
We do.
Okay, great.
We'll get started on 7474 York Drive with the staff report.
Yes, sir.
The subject property is located in the southeast corner of the intersection of York and Glenridge, zoned R2, and is developed with a two-story single-family home. Property's location on the corner results in street frontage on both the north and west sides. The house's primary front yard faces York. Per section 405-1900A1B, where lots have double frontages, the required front yard setback provisions shall be provided on both streets. The applicant is seeking approval to install a black aluminum fence in the front yard setback along Glenridge. The fence is proposed to be 4.5 feet, which exceeds the permitted height by 6 inches. Staff recommend approval with the condition that the fence height be reduced to 4 feet in height.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, John?
Yes, sir. So my understanding too of the situation that it was in proximity to how close the fence was to the sidewalk, which we have set that back 4 feet from the sidewalk. And then to the homeowner was looking to have the fence stay at that height just for additional security for dogs and for their kids. Also to keep the design uniform throughout. So nothing major, but the fence, although it is on double frontage, was over the 20-foot setback from the intersection. So it didn't interfere with any visual from the public or anyone driving up and down. So I wanted to appeal if that 6 inches would pass for this fence.
Well, as you've probably read in the criteria for review in the staff report, section 405.1900.A.1.D says up to 4 feet above the grade level. Not 4'6".
I understand that. And we have just gotten those materials, which took a little while for the homeowner. So we didn't want additional fees on their behalf, but I understand that is the code now.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So we will stand by that unless you would want to go for alternative, but I would certainly recommend you go with the 4 foot.
Okay.
Other comments?
Yep. That's it from me. Thank you.
Okay. Bob?
No comment.
Helen?
I think we need to stay with the 4 feet.
Jim?
Can you just talk me through the path of the fence as like coming out from the garage and then going over and then back to the house versus just being basically at the building line that's allowed and going straight from the garage over to the house?
Yeah, the point is more so just maximizing the property for the homeowner to let their kids roam and for their dog. Just because being a corner lot, sometimes those backyards can be a little bit more smaller and squeezed out. So bringing it forward a little bit was just more advantageous for the homeowner.
Does this 21-foot different distance from the corner of the garage, is that what is to, you said that this is 4 feet from the sidewalk? Does that 21 feet go 4 feet from the sidewalk, or is that a previous number to the sidewalk line?
Good question. That's correct. It's 4 feet. That 21 feet will still be 4 feet from the sidewalk.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any comments from the audience? Or any hands up? No hands up, thank you. Walking around the house, John, there's quite a bit of landscaping there, which I think eventually as it grows and more may be added, the fence may actually disappear in people's view. So I have no problem with it. You really haven't heard any problem. And we have a staff recommendation to reduce the fence height to 4 feet to comply with the R2 front yard fence height requirements. And are you in agreement with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Well, then we can go on and have a motion.
I move that we approve the staff recommendation adopting the plan with the following condition: to reduce height to 4 feet to comply with R2 front yard fence height requirements.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. You're on your way.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in. Okay, we will now go on to item 3, which is 46 Hillvale. And the applicant is here. We will start with the staff report.
The subject property is located on the southeast side of Hillvale between Crestwood and Broadview. The property is zoned R2 and is developed with a 2-story single-family home. The applicant is seeking to construct an addition on the northeast side of the home. The addition would include an elevator and laundry room. A similar addition was approved in February 2024, with that approval having now expired. The proposed addition would be located on the northeast side of the home and complies with the height, setback, and coverage requirements of the R2 district. Brick matching the existing structure is proposed for the first and second floor of the addition. New shake siding matching the home's existing shake siding is proposed on the second story of the facade. The foundation of the side in the rear would be exposed concrete. Staff are of the opinion that this should have a minimal visual impact and recommend approval as submitted.
Okay, thank you. Simon? Introduce yourself and add anything you would like.
I'm Simon Agelnick. I'm the owner and lived there 40 years. We're trying to put in an elevator. I had a lot of trouble getting a contractor to actually do the job. This is the third contractor we've
Can you
tried to
speak
hire.
up just a little?
And I'm sorry?
Can you speak up
Yes,
just a little?
this is, we've had trouble getting a contractor, so it took us longer. We've submitted, I guess I didn't realize that these expired, but we, basically it's the plan's the same one as we had before and was approved. So I guess I ask that you approve it.
Well, we certainly like seeing people modifying their house so they can live in it longer. I think many of us would like to do that at some point. And we realize that really you're here only for a reapproval at this point, no changes. I have no problem with it. Bob?
No problem.
Helen?
It looks good. I like the revisions.
Jim?
I like the project. My only qualm as a rule follower, you did not get approval from the Claverack Park trustees, which I know you were aware of and you had lots of time to do. So
We requested it. We went to the trust, we got the approval from the neighbors, filled out the form and so forth and turned it into the trustee, but the trustee said that he was retiring as trustee and he was going to give it to the new guy and they haven't had a meeting since.
oh no, that's me who you're talking about.
Oh,
So
yes,
no, okay, so I reached out to the other trustees and they said they had not seen anything, but overall, this is just a sticking point. Like I said, I'd like to bring these things up. Overall, I think the project looks good and I don't think there's any reason to take any more time, so.
Any comments from the audience? No? And I would assume no other hands up there. Okay. Of course, we have a recommendation to approve as submitted. Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the staff recommendation to adopt the plan as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
I
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay. Well, good luck with your third contractor.
I hope we make it. Thanks.
We'll move on to 123 North Forsyth. And of course, we'll start with the site plan staff report.
So for site plan, the subject property is located on the west side of Forsyth where the street intersects with Westmoreland. The property is zoned R2 and is in the Clayton Gardens Urban Design District. The site was previously developed with a 1-story single-family house. And the house was demolished and the applicant is proposing to construct a 2-story single-family house. The previous structure was demolished as part of a demolition permit with no associated new construction. The site has not been restored or maintained in compliance with the demolition permit. No new permits will be issued until the property comes into compliance. The project meets the setback height and impervious coverage requirements of the R2 zoning district and Clayton Gardens Urban Design District. HVAC units would be located on the north side of the home and mounted to the wall. Trash would be stored in the basement storage area adjacent to the garage. Trash in Clayton is valeted by sanitation workers, and trash bins would need to be removed from this area on trash days by the homeowner. Coverage would increase from 46.4 to 54.9%. Stormwater runoff is evaluated in cubic feet per second in 15-year 20-minute storm events. Total runoff would increase from 0.6 to 0.63 cubic feet per second. This increased runoff would be mitigated with the dry well connected to the roof via gutters and downspouts. Public Works noted in their review that the dry well will only function appropriately if the native soils around it can absorb the water quickly enough to keep it from filling up and holding standing water. Percolation test results should be provided at the dry well location to ensure proper soil conditions are present. Staff are of the opinion that the drainage proposal would be sufficient pending these percolation tests. Existing canopy coverage is 7,545 square feet with 7,501 to be removed. The plan proposes adding 6,500 square feet, which is 1,852 more than the replacement requirement. The plan exceeds the native species requirement with 66.7% native proposed. The landscape architect noted that the site has been cleared and that tree protection standards were not followed, likely damaging the street trees. Public Works examined the conditions of the trees and determined that vertical mulching around the root structure of these street trees is needed to alleviate any compression or consolidation caused by equipment running through the critical root zone. Staff recommend approval with the following conditions. 1, that the applicant shall vertical mulch around the root structure of the street trees to alleviate any compression or consolidation caused by equipment running through the critical root zone. 2, that the applicant shall provide a percolation test report conducted by a qualified geotechnical engineer. The report must assess the performance of the proposed dry well based on the anticipated impact of a 15-year 20-minute storm event. Should these results indicate that the proposed dry well is insufficient to accommodate the stormwater runoff generated by this event, the applicant shall be required to upsize the dry well accordingly to ensure the adequate performance and compliance of applicable stormwater management standards. And 3, to ensure future maintenance and operation of the dry well, the applicant shall record a deed restriction noting the location and maintenance requirements of the dry well system and shall submit proof of filing prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Okay, thank you. Lauren?
Good evening. I'm Lauren Strutman, the architect for the project, and I want to introduce, we have Eric Vietmeyer from Vols with us tonight, and we have the owner builder, Tony Coffer, is sitting next to Eric. And I also brought along Steve Ensley from my office. And Eric is going to start by presenting the site plan. We do actually have, I believe, Bill Weisschauer on Zoom if anyone had any questions on the landscape plan as well tonight.
Evening, Eric Vietmeyer with Vols Engineering. We are the civil engineer of record for the project. More than happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Well, it's a comment. Please go through and tell us between the existing and the proposed drainage, where it's going, how it will affect the homes to the north, the south, and the west, as well as the street in front.
Right, so I have the same colored exhibit that's up on your screen right now. So going to the left, we have an existing runoff of 0.36 going to the left, and then 0.40 for the proposed.
To the left is to the south.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. However, the 0.40 that is proposed to go to the south is actually all going into the dry well. The roof area is going to the dry well, and the water that's coming down the driveway will be intercepted by a French drain at the property line and direct that to the dry well as well. So there's no increase in water going to the neighbor to the south. We're actually eliminating the runoff to the neighbor to the south. Out towards the street, we had an existing runoff of 0.08 CFS. We have a proposed runoff of 0.07 CFS. So we're reducing the amount going to the street. Going to the west, we had a small little area that was incalculable. And we had the same incalculable area going to the west as well. So 0 increase going to the individual to the west. And actually, I misspoke. We had 0.36 going to the west. The 0.40 that is going to the dry well is going to the dry well. What is going to the west further is 0.10. So it's significant reduction from 0.36 to 0.10 to the west. To the north, we had 0.13 CFS of runoff. Proposed will have 0.05. So in every direction, we are reducing the runoff from the existing condition to the proposed.
And I think I heard you say the trench drain is at the property line?
Yes, there's a French drain near the property line to the west that is collecting the water coming off of the driveway.
And where does that water go?
That will go into the dry well.
Oh, and the dry well is in the grassy area.
Correct, yes. And the dry well size to accommodate the runoff that is being generated towards the dry well. And I believe it's even oversized. If we go to, is this mouse working, Ryan, or? If we go to the C,
Your mouse might be turned off.
there we go. On my C1, there was a note that explains, yeah, if you can zoom in, right? Yeah, so it was already oversized by 125% for the volume that was being tributary to the dry well. So whatever the geotechnical engineer deems, necessary, I already have a little bit of a buffer built into it for the tributary area. Didn't design the dry well for the differential, I designed it for the tributary volume.
We don't always see that.
I try to do that most of the times. It's just a little bit more rock. And it's an easy thing to do, yet it makes it possible to have reductions in runoff in just about every direction.
Okay. I think I follow it now. I was confused about that trench drain. I couldn't see where it was going, so.
Yeah.
Of course, we get very small drawings.
Right.
So, okay, on site plan, were you finished?
Yeah.
Okay, Bob?
I've got nothing. But you are saying that the water runoff is being reduced on all 4 sides?
Yes, that's what the math shows.
Ellen?
Sounds good. No comment.
Jim?
Neither of these are civil engineering questions, so you might not be able to answer, but for the trash enclosure, first of all, is this is this house is being built for someone specifically? Like I'd be worried if it was just like a spec home as far as translating the, okay, great. I figured that looking at the plans, but I wanted to make sure, just because with a trash situation where the trash would need to be brought out, I would just want to make sure that, someone fully understood the trash rules, so there weren't trash cans just always out.
That's fair, yes.
Yes. The other question that I had is, there was talk about damage to street trees, and was there any ownership change between when the site was cleared and now? Or is the current ownership responsible for that damage and not following the tree protection procedures?
I don't know that there was damage. I think the landscape architect was talking about doing some mulch to prevent damage. If I understood correctly.
They noted that there was damage.
Okay, all right.
The sense that I got from reading the report was that the site was cleared, and when it was cleared, the tree protection guidelines were not followed and there was damage to street trees. So I was just wondering if that was a previous party or if that was the current ownership of everything.
come up to the microphone if you're going to keep speaking. Otherwise, it doesn't go online. Thank you.
As to my knowledge, I did not see any damage. I do know that there's 2 pear trees on the city side, and both of them are rotting. They're soft and they're falling constantly. I would like to remove them and put nicer trees there.
So I guess the answer to Jim's question is we're not sure when the damage took place or occurred.
I am
Okay.
not sure, no.
Well, at least the report is saying at the time that the previous house was demolished, that tree protection guidelines were not followed. So I was just wondering if that was someone else, if that was someone else's mistake, or if that kind of falls on the same group. So
Did have the orange fencing around the entire area that contained the fence, the trees on the sidewalk side towards the street. So I'm not aware of any damage to the tree.
okay. I don't, if the orange fencing was around there, I don't know what tree protection measures necessarily weren't followed. I think my only concern in situations like this would be like, if I just think of a hypothetical where someone, staggers a new build from a demolition and doesn't necessarily follow all the rules, but then when coming back, it's like there's, it's an easier to ask forgiveness than permission type of thing. So that's the only thing I was thinking reading it.
I think as in the staff report, it's written, no new permits will be issued for the property until it comes into compliance. So whatever was deemed out of compliance will have to be corrected. Is that correct, Anna? Thank you. Any other comments on site plan review?
Steve, I just have one clarifying question for the applicant, if you don't mind. So you mentioned that the trench drain at the end of the driveway is collecting water and then putting it into the dry well?
A French drain.
A French drain, sorry. So a French drain's collecting, the perforated drain is collecting to go into the dry well. I don't see a overflow pop-up emitter then coming off of the dry well.
Typically, I do have a pop-up outside of the gravel zone of the dry well.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, the original submittal, it was right up against the pavement for the turnaround. That was a comment. So the center cap is called out as the outlet on the plans. So it's, the center cap is supposed to be slotted. That will be the overflow discharge point.
Okay. And then the pop-up that is just north of the dry well
That-
area is your sump pump overflow.
Correct. That's a sump pump in
And
in the underground storage area.
so then the discharge area, that's that on the plan that was in pink that Ryan had up previously is
that-
like what you're predicting to be the dry well and the roof or the deck
and
area.
Correct.
Okay.
I believe we had a hand up. If you come on up and identify yourself and question.
Plan. My name is Andrea LaBarge, and I reside in the adjacent property, in the adjacent home, in the adjacent property at 111 North Forsyth, which is directly to the south. And my only concern is I had a hard time telling from the site plan exactly where the driveway would be, because the driveway from the previous residence was built over our property line. And there had been a survey stake showing the discrepancy, and I can't see that spike any longer. It may be covered with debris, or it might be gone due to the demolition. So that's my concern, that this situation be corrected with the new structure and the new driveway, so that we don't have a property line issue in the future.
Let's go back to the civil engineer and see if he has a comment on that.
The driveway is going to be about 3 feet off of our south property line. So it's getting
Oh,
moved
perfect.
further away from
Okay,
you.
great. I
There's-
just couldn't tell. I
There's
tried
gonna
to
be a little
look
bit of a
online.
berm
Okay.
there, so that's what's preventing all of our water from getting to you.
Great.
And it's all going towards the
Protect
rear.
my
to get into
fence
that
too.
drywall.
And the current demolition has piled up asphalt against our fence and caused our fence to bow. So that situation will need to be remedied at some point.
Yeah, so part of the not non-compliant conditions of the site today that will need to be completed is that they did not fully complete the demolition permit, which required the removal of the asphalt, the regrading, et cetera. So they'll have to start from a new place, which would include removing that asphalt before they begin the new construction.
And then we can evaluate the damage to the fence.
That will be between the two individual parties. The city won't be involved in that discussion, but
I know, Tony. very
there you
well.
go.
I'm not worried about that. I'm
Good.
sure it will be remedied, but I had a hard time telling from the site plan exactly where the driveway was going to be, and I wanted to make sure that our current condition was corrected. Thank you.
You. I don't think I saw any other hands. So if there are no further comments, we do have a staff recommendation to approve with the 3 following conditions. And do we have a motion?
I move that we adopt the staff recommendation, adopting the plan with the 3 conditions. Number 1, the applicant shall vertical mulch around the root structure of the street trees to alleviate any compression, consolidation caused by equipment running through critical root zone. Number 2, the applicant shall provide a percolation test by a qualified geotechnical engineer. And it must assess the performance of the proposed dry well according to certain years. And if there's a problem, they have to correct it. Are you aware of that? Okay. And third, to ensure the future maintenance and operation of the dry well drive, the applicant shall record a deed restriction noting the location and maintenance requirements of the dry well system and shall submit proof of the recording prior to issuance of a building permit. Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We can now move on to 123 North Forsyth, the architectural review.
New construction is common in Clayton Gardens, with existing houses often replaced with larger ones. New entryways are often covered or recessed. Properties often have ornamental features such as brick accents or stone surrounds for the front doors and windows. The houses are articulated on all sides with windows and doors. The proposed massing is similar to other new construction nearby. The proposed design utilizes square shapes and gives a minimalist appearance and a contemporary style through with a generous use of glazing. Brick accents are proposed at the base of each floor. Staff are of the opinion that the proposal is likely to appear more contemporary than its immediate neighbors, but there are examples of contemporary homes in Clayton Gardens. The proposed house would be constructed of light tan brick with similarly colored stone and stucco accent materials. Windows and doors would be black. A glass railing is proposed for the rear terrace, front porch, and front balcony. Exposed aggregate is proposed for the driveway and front entry path. Staff find that the project meets the Clayton Gardens Urban Design District requirements and the architectural review guidelines. Staff recommend approval is submitted.
Okay.
Evening. This is a 4,257 square foot home, which is pretty close to the average home we tend to do in these lots in Clayton, but it's on a larger than normal lot. It's an 85-foot wide lot. We actually have an excess of space on the left and the right between this home and the neighbor and on each side. And the home will be built with limestone. No, it's a little more contemporary, but there are quite a few contemporary homes being built in Clayton, certainly in areas like Clayton Gardens where there's a lot of homes in transition and a lot of new homes. And we think it'll be an attractive complement to the neighborhood. And I'm here to answer any questions you have on what we proposed.
Well, I think it's a beautiful home. I think it'll fit in the neighborhood very well. I especially like the windows. The solid to void ratio is different from what we usually see. We have much more glass, and I think that really accentuates the contemporary look of the house. I notice you have a 4 and 12 roof pitch, which normally I say I think that's too low. But in this case, given the homes to either side of it, I think it'll be fine. But I do think it may tend to foreshorten as we look at it from the street, because the rendering up on the screen right now, I don't think is from the street. I think our eye level is sort of at the second floor line. So as our eye level comes down, I think the roof will tend to disappear more. But given the circumstance of the large house to the south and the fairly large house to the north, I'm okay with it. Bob?
I think it's attractive and will fit in the neighborhood.
Thank you.
Ellen?
I like it. And thank you for being maybe the first to do a new house that is lower than the adjacent ones. It fits in. I like the way you've manipulated the space. It might not be very obvious in the drawings, but looking at the plans and then the elevations, well done.
Jim?
I appreciate a second attempt to talk about contemporary architecture tonight, because I think this is a much more elegant solution to a building, and I think it fits in better than some other examples that I've seen possibly. I guess I will be the one to quibble with the 412 roof. I think that the roof is too short. And I know that there's a similar house you designed in Claverack Park at 31 Ridgemore that I believe has a similar roof pitch. And from the street, the roof just completely disappears. I personally would like to see a more pitched roof, even if it kind of goes up maybe a little bit above the neighbors. That might not be a popular opinion here. But I don't know if the 412 was just to try and get below the neighbors or if there's another reason for it.
I'd like to explain that. What we very much wanted to do was to set this house so we did not have to have a pump station on the driveway. And because Tony is familiar with those pump stations and really didn't want those on her new home. And so we only put in a 9-foot basement. A lot of new homes have 10-foot basements. We put a 9-foot basement in, and we have a 10-foot main level and a 9-foot upper level, which would be pretty typical in a house like this, a high quality home. And this 412 roof is at the height limit. We don't have a choice to make it taller. And that's kind of how the math added up. And I also think the 412 roof is certainly in keeping with the contemporary style. And we basically, the height limit, and I wish Clayton might consider changing this in the future. It's based on the average existing grade on the lot, and this lot, when it was existing, dropped off quite a bit. So that set the measuring for where we went up to our height limit rather low. And you could drive down a street in Clayton and see a house where the backyard is flatter and it gets a higher pitch roof. And if you see a house where the backyard dropped off more, they end up with a lower pitch roof. So it's really the mathematics of the ordinances that we ended up with the 412 roof, but I think it is in keeping with the style of a house.
Well, I appreciate that explanation. I appreciate there being an actual reason behind it as opposed to just, throwing numbers at a page, which I feel like sometimes we're seeing. So thank you.
Any comments from the audience on architectural review? No hands up. Okay. Well, we do have a staff recommendation to approve as submitted. Any further comments? from the commission? No? Then do we have a motion?
I move we approve the staff recommendation, adopting the plan as submitted.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Thank you all very much.
thank you. Now we've come to 8141 Pershing Avenue. I believe the applicant is here. We'll start off with the staff report.
The subject property is located on the north side of Pershing between Forsyth and Brentwood. The property is zoned R2 and is in the Clayton Gardens Urban Design District. The property is developed with a single-family home, and the applicant is seeking to construct a residential addition and detached garage. These surrounding properties contain single-family homes of various sizes. Aspects of height and impervious coverage are discussed in the coverage section of the staff report and architectural review staff report. The new HVAC unit is proposed on the north side of the addition, and trash would be stored within a fenced enclosure in the rear yard. The Clayton Gardens Urban Design District limits impervious coverage to 40% with incentives for up to 55%, and the applicant has met the criteria for up to 55% impervious coverage. The proposal has an impervious coverage measurement of 58.1%, and the applicant is seeking approval of the proposed coverage via alternative compliance, section 410-285. Staff are of the opinion that the site does not present unusual circumstances, but it may adequately manage stormwater and does not impact the green space character intent within the Clayton Gardens Urban Design District. Although the proposal may meet or exceed the intent of these design standards equally well or better, staff are of the opinion that the lack of unusual circumstance limits the applicability of alternative compliance. Total runoff would increase from 0.35 to 0.38 cubic feet per second. This increase in runoff would be mitigated with the installation of a dry well. The staff are of the opinion that the stormwater may be effectively managed pending soils percolation test. Subject property presently has no trees, which do not contribute to canopy coverage. The applicant prefers open space and does not want to plant any trees. Per section 405-410C2, the city shall be compensated for any tree canopy coverage deficiency through payment to the city forestry fund. The applicant would be required to pay $1,656 to the city forestry fund. Staff recommend the proposal be continued to allow the applicant to consider revisions.
Okay, thank you. And the applicant, come on up and identify yourself and add anything you'd like.
Thank you so much. My name is Nick McCulloch. I am the homeowner of 8141 Pershing Avenue, along with my wife, Nishath, who is a physician here at Barnes University and Washington University and WashU. Also here with our two children, Ryan and Zaki, who both attend Clayton school districts, and we are here to present the addition that we've been working on for the last several months. We absolutely love living in Clayton, and our kids adore living, going to school in Clayton School District. And we really hope that you'll listen to our story here today and why we don't agree with some of the recommendations that the city has provided. Now, I understand you have to go through, procedures, but we'd like to also present, some of our reasons why we believe that you should approve a impervious material exception so we can, grant and do our addition. What we're proposing is a, addition in the basement, right? So we can build a much larger basement than we have today in the 1940s style home. On the first floor, our main objective is to really enlarge our kitchen, right? We have a super small 1940s kitchen that is 10 feet wide, right? And we really need a butler's pantry. And we've gone through 9 different iterations with multiple different architects and civil engineers that we've worked with. And this is the only one we were able to get all the things that we needed to expand our kitchen and enlarge our family room. And with modern conditions today, I work from home 100% of the time. And it's really loud with like kids and everyone running in and out. We don't have a home office, right? So we are proposing a second floor on top of our garage for a home office. right? These are some of the additions that we really, really need. We've tried our hardest to do a attached garage and not do impervious, conditions, because we know how difficult that is, but we were not able to get everything squeezed in. Because if you take a look at the dimensions of our property, we're only able to extend our current garage 2 feet before we hit the 30-foot setback, which you cannot fit a three-row SUV that way. You cannot enlarge your kitchen. You can't even get in when you do that. All right. And if you don't mind, I can pass these on. Condition number one, fairness of lot size and unusual circumstances. Our neighbor right across the street has a 6,230 square foot lot. We have a 6,003 square foot lot. That to me justifies an unusual circumstance. If our lot was 50 by 125 like theirs, we wouldn't be here today asking for this exception, right? That is one main reason, right? So because of this, because of this disadvantage, we do not, we're requesting a really, really small exception to restore parity with houses next door. Without alternative compliance, we are uniquely disadvantaged. Number two is we have done everything we could with the civil engineer to make sure that our stormwater drainage is better than it is today. In the back of our house, you will see on page 2 and 3 of the reports, you're going to see that we're improving the stormwater condition slightly better than it is today, even though we are going to 58%. Today, we're at 47.2%. If we go to 58.1 and you allow us to, enlarge our kitchen, enlarge our family room, and build a home office, we will improve our water condition, our stormwater condition substantially. Number 3, green space is preserved. All new impervious area is confined to the rear of the yard. The signature open lawns and landscape front setback of Clayton Garden remains untouched. All right. That is condition number 3. Number 4, the design quality and neighborhood compatibility. So detaching the garage puts the bulk behind the house, lowering the appeared mass from the street, and is more compatible with adjacent rear garages that you see today, especially in our neighborhood. Keeping the garage detached was the only configuration that allowed a modest expansion of our undersized kitchen and family room plans. With the attached garage, we can only shift it 2 feet before we hit that 30-foot, setback limit, leaving interior rooms functionally unchanged. All right. The addition meets every height, side yard and rear yard setbacks, and the architectural style has already earned favorable recommendations from the Architectural Review Board members during preliminary review. Meeting Plan Commission objectives. If you look at the guidelines and the building codes, desirable environment and creating land use, preservation of site and character. We're doing all of that. Better design and aesthetic amenities. We are doing that as well. And our ask, again, is very minimal and insignificant, right? We're asking for a 3.1% exception, which is 186 square feet over the 55% incentive level. Provides our family-friendly living space and keeps the owner invested in Clayton. We will stay in Clayton. That's the main thing. We love, the city of Clayton. We really want to be here. And we've tried 9 different designs, and this is the only one where we're able to hit everything. And we hope that you will allow us to, get this exception. Adds property tax basis without burdening city infrastructure, runoff neutral, no sewer extensions at all, and no street work, right? Things that I can offer to incentivize and make things better is I can increase, the dry well after the percolation test and oversize it by 25%. I have no problem having our civil engineer do that. We can, recorded maintenance covenants for the dry well, landscaping enhancements, we can add one canopy tree plus additional funds to the forestry department. We have no problem with doing any of that as well. We will address all of the remaining SWPPP comments before we get any building permits. And my closing message to everyone here in front of me today is our goal, again, is to achieve a kitchen, family room, and a home office that meets modern family living standards while remaining fully connected, consistent with Clayton Gardens' character and the spirit of impervious coverage ordinance. We believe the facts demonstrate that our proposal not only protects but slightly improves stormwater performance, leaves the neighborhood streetscape unchanged, and remedies a proportional hardship faced by smaller lots. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. That helps us understand your thought process going into this. We often see people wanting to update their almost 70-year-old home to modern standards, and we certainly commend you for that. However, the site plan, the 50 by 120 foot dimensions, really is pretty standard in many of our neighborhoods in the city. Actually, there are some that are actually smaller lots than that. But the issue that I have is going over the 55%. I think that opens up many negatives for our city. One of them is continual precedence for going higher than the 55%. Many people have heard that I think we should be lower than that right now because we have extreme flooding conditions in many of our neighborhoods. Even with dry wells and everything else, nothing is perfect. The other thing that I see in your plan is that the green space left over is not accessible or in view from the house. So I would not even consider that as green space for a family. So I have great issues with how this is laid out, but I do understand that updating the kitchen and the family room is very important. But when we look at it on a site plan basis, I don't think it meets our requirements. So, but I'll stop there. Bob?
I just want to understand that the green space in the backyard is not accessible.
Yes, it would be accessible through the family room, and it's about 870 square feet would be remaining.
How? It doesn't show.
It's in there. Ryan, do you mind moving to one of the pictures of the 3D renderings in the end? In one of the last pages, there will be a green space in the back of about 800 and some square feet.
Can I walk to the backyard by not going through your house?
So you can reach the backyard. Sorry, I didn't fully hear you.
Can I get to your backyard by going around your house?
Yeah, you could get to the backyard going to the side, but not around the house because there's a fence in the back. And you can get to the backyard, you know, through the garage because a 10-foot setback between, you know, the extension and then where the garage, detached
The
garage.
kids would have access to the green space through your house.
Yeah, you can have access right there through the house. If you take a look.
And I want to make sure I understand what's at issue here. The 3%, is that 137 square feet we're talking about?
Exactly. That's what we're
Like
asking.
a small office. It's like an office.
So we've tried to shrink it, then if we shrink the family room anymore, then we don't have a functional bathroom upstairs, right? We don't have a functional walk-in closet, right? We've tried that dimension. We tried attached garage. I can bring all the other drawings if you'd like, right? We also have approvals from every single neighbor, 2 horses down, left side, right side, 2 in front of us, all of them agree with it. And I sat here in front of the board in January when our neighbor, 8140 Pershing, they got a 3% exception for impervious materials, right? So I'm not, saying, I wouldn't have done this, I wouldn't gone this far if I didn't see this happen already before, right? So that's why I'm really asking for a little bit of lenience, because we've invested not only so much time and money, but we have made sure that every drop of water will stay on our property. Right?
So what's at issue here is 137 square feet or whatever. And what it would cost for you not to have it is this additional space you were just talking about on the second floor.
Yeah, it would cut back our second floor, it would cut back our living room, our family room, and we would not be able to have as large of a walk-in closet upstairs, and we would not be able to have as large of a bathroom upstairs, a master bathroom. So what we're looking to do on the second floor is a new master bathroom, 2 new bathrooms, a master bedroom, and a walk-in closet as well. All right,
And let's say you don't get this. What's on that floor now?
if we don't get this, unfortunately, we probably will move. All right. We have 2 young kids and this house is too small for us. And we've tried everything. Like I can bring in all the other plans that we've tried with an attached garage to stay under the impervious materials. We have tried multiple different drawings. I wouldn't have gone this far, right? If I didn't see, we didn't see approval before. Like I said, I sat here in January, I saw it. And then we tried every configuration to stay under, but we were not able to. When you do an attached garage, we can only go 2 feet out. That means we can extend our family room, but right now we can't even fit a couch in there because it's way too small. Right? We can only extend it 2 feet out, and then we can't even add a butler's pantry or a mudroom because you can't get a car to turn around such a tight 90-degree turn. It's impossible. We had a civil engineer do a simulation, and it's not even possible to do that. All right?
I mean, when Steve talks about setting the precedent of what happens if we go over the amount,
I know.
everybody's always going to have a story.
This is a story. I totally
And
understand.
in my head, I hear, well, we're only talking 3% or a size of of an office, an associate's office. To me, that doesn't sound like a lot. I'm trying to balance the homeowner's needs against what is it that the city's trying to protect. My initial reaction is 3%. Doesn't seem like a huge step over the boundary line, so to speak. And you're also are saying that your plans contain all the water on your property because you have an oversized dry well?
Oversized drywall. If you take a look at the report, even the report from the Architectural Review Board, we are going to improve the water condition. So right now we're at 47.2%. We are actually going to have less water draining if you approve it to 58.1 by having an oversized drywall. We're taking 483 square feet from the addition of the roof and channeling it into a drywall in the backyard.
Nothing further.
Ellen?
I have concerns too, like Steve, about the increase. And oversizing a dry well, if we have everybody increasing and oversizing dry wells, we're just putting the water instead of on the surface. We're hoping it will disappear underground. At what point, and I'm not a civil engineer, at what point do you reach saturation? So I think we've set a limit, and I think we need to live with it. The thing that I see too with the plan, the site plan, is for trash collection, the trash person needs to walk down across the front of your garage, down apparently what will be grass, to a trash area. Are, you know, how will they know that? It's not the same group of guys each time. I think that needs to, it's a minor item, but I think the plan that you've got is a start. I think it needs to be pushed and pulled. The only exit that I see from the back of the house to the garage or the green area is a door from the mudroom. There's a wall shown at the family room, a solid wall. So your elevations don't match your plans. As the homeowner, you want them to match because you want to know what you're getting. So
Make that adjustment. I could work with the architect and civil engineer.
who is the architect?
We worked with multiple different architects. Initially, we worked with Elizabeth Plank, and she retired. And then we worked with an individual by the name of, I forgot his name,
Oh, I don't
Yep.
need to know the names.
Adam
I was just-
Alexander, and then we worked with a couple others as well, the civil engineer.
Okay, because there's only an engineer's seal,
There's only what?
an engineer's seal
Yes.
on everything. Okay,
Isaac, can't think of his last name. Isaac Gutierrez.
Adam Alexander is the one. You've got what you want, but I think it needs work. And getting rid of that extra 3% to me is very important.
Jim?
Yeah, I certainly sympathize with your situation. I'm also a father with 2 young kids. I know how space can get tight and stuff. That being said, I know 3% might not necessarily sound a lot to you, but to the plans that I think we see on a weekly basis, I think 3% is pretty large. And I looked at, you have to make up 186 square feet, and I look at the plan and I just feel like there's a solution here that's not necessarily this specific solution. I did have questions kind of along the lines that Helen was asking. You Build It, who produced these plans, doesn't have a location in Missouri, so.
Do, in Kansas City and here in St. Louis as well.
Okay, on their website, they don't list as being in Missouri, and they were only stamped by an engineer. I personally found the plans hard to read, and I could not see doorways into certain areas and everything like that. So that gave me a lot of questions too, as far as like, is this an architect that has walked the site, that has considered all your needs and tried to incorporate them? And is there not a slightly more elegant solution here that can give you all your needs, but not go over that 3%? I think also when we're looking at things that you could possibly do, you talk about the 30-foot setback a lot, but perhaps, if it's a couple feet at the setback versus an pervious situation, that's something that might be easier to get a waiver on than water flow, only because water problems are one of just the biggest problems that we see. And we are going more in the direction of having less impervious coverage, not more. So I think we are in a tough position as far as to be granting a waiver for that, especially when I think there are some ways they can move around and that it doesn't necessarily present an unusual circumstance.
Before we go any further, Ryan, could you pull up sheet 13? That's it. Okay. If you look at the new main floor plan on the left, around what is labeled a new family room, there appears to be a wall around it. Is that the existing garage wall?
That's where the civil engineer identified a watershed area. Is that what you said? A water, can you repeat the question?
Okay, now it's blown up. You can see the new family room
Yep.
with what looks like a fireplace on the north wall and two doors. Those doors we saw on the elevation, but I'm looking at it from a site plan point of view. What is that wall that is hatched going around the north?
That's the outline of the old wall of the current garage. All right, so if you take a look at the dark shaded, that's where the current garage is, that would be removed. So we're bringing it in a little bit to allow a 10-foot setback from the detached garage. And we're shrinking the size because right now we're not 5 feet from the property line. Right, the current garage is 2.5 feet from the property line. All right, so that would be taken down and we would actually hit the 5-foot requirement.
Okay, then what I said before, I was incorrect. I took that wall as being part of the
No.
new
that's being taken
condition.
down.
Okay.
I was looking too, like at that mudroom, and it looks like there was a wall in the mudroom, and you can see from the outside, it's like, okay, you can get into the mudroom, but how do you access it other than that exterior door?
No,
Because
no,
there's,
sorry, that was, we can have the architect fix that, but that's the outline of the old, garage, just showing that we're shrinking it 2.5 feet. Right, so because currently we're 2.5 feet from the property line with our attached garage. Now we're gonna be 5 feet from the property line and we are going in. So we are further in, and then, like I said, the new family would have 2 exits. Right, it would have 2 doors and we can exit into the backyard. And we are bringing it in, so we have a 10-foot setback from the detached property. So we are shrinking the size to meet all of the setback requirements.
Okay. Back to the site plan, now that I think we may understand the floor plan drawing a little bit better.
Apologies, that could have been done clearer.
Yeah, I think you've got a extremely confined courtyard back there to try to turn around a vehicle, especially if it's a 3-row SUV. Unless you're very good at backing out of the garage and aiming down to your relatively narrow driveway. And I looked at it and I began worrying about that. That combined with the very small green space, which will have the dry well below it, and the exceeding the 55% impervious coverage. I think I have a lot of problems with it. I really would suggest that, because we'd like to see you come up with something that would work, and I'm talking about site plan, is that you need to have an architect draw up the drawings a little more accurately, let's say a lot more accurately, and then have the engineer use those drawings, because the communication we're getting from this, we're confused. But that doesn't resolve my issue with the extra 3+%. I just cannot see doing that. Any other comments from the audience? No hands up, I would imagine.
Can I throw this up?
Sure.
I'm probably more sympathetic to you, and I'm concerned if a vote was taken tonight, you wouldn't like the results. Okay? Is it crazy to knock down the garage?
Thank you. Yeah, one final comment. No, thank you. We really appreciate, I know this is a long day for everyone here. And disappointing for us and our family. And I never would have gone through this if I hadn't sat here in January and saw and the board approve a 3% exception for exact same thing across the street.
If the garage was knocked down and you reclaim and you back down to 55%, is that too tough to live with?
No, like if we go without a garage, then we don't have because we're proposing a two-story garage, and the second floor would be our office. Right, so that's the problem, like it's work from home, right? It's hard to have a quiet space in the home at all. So,
Well, we are, Nick, we are not taking a vote right now.
okay,
And the staff recommendation that I'm sure you've read or heard, staff recommended that the proposal be continued to allow the applicant to consider revisions. And as Bob was indicating, if we were to take a vote, you might get a no vote. So we would recommend that you would agree to us tabling it to a date in the future to allow you to rethink it a little better, maybe get the architect into it a little more, and revise a few of the drawings and hopefully come up with a solution that may work.
so does that mean you want us to reduce below 55% or at 55? Or do you want
Well,
better?
I think you've heard that. We're not going to vote on any particular issues, but we will take a vote whether to vote tonight or to recommend postponing it, allowing you time to come back.
Also, Chairman, for the record, I looked it up. Your neighbor received a variance approval from the Board of Adjustment. So this group here was not the same group that approved that for your neighbor, just for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you. Which direction would you like to go?
We'll continue. We'll try to revise the plans.
Do we have comments from the commission on whether to continue or not?
I move to continue this to a future meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think,
Yes, so the future meeting, we'll wait to hear from you with response to comments to set that date.
and I think that would also mean that we should continue the architectural review rather than go through it tonight. Need we vote on that also?
Yes.
Okay.
I move to continue architectural review to a future meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
And Ryan will follow up with you.
Okay. Well, we've come to the discussion session. And
Steve, do we want to check and see if anybody has shown up for Forsyth?
oh, forgot. Yes, thank you. Is anyone here for 7923 Forsyth?
Okay, well, this is a conditional use permit for a restaurant, so this will require Board of Alderman approval as well. There was a public hearing advertised for it. Are you okay? So you could choose to still consider this request without the applicant being present if you'd like to, or not.
Oh, well, we have it on the agenda. I think we should take a look at it.
If we could, one of the reasons for doing so is there is a public hearing scheduled for the Board of Aldermen already because of the lead time required to advertise for that. So having the benefit of your views for the Board of Aldermen would be worthwhile.
Okay, and we can do it without the applicant.
They've been given notice of that they're on the agenda for consideration, so yes.
Okay. Let's do it.
The staff report summary?
Yes.
The applicant is seeking a conditional use permit to allow for the operation of a deli on the subject property located on the north side of Forsyth Boulevard between Central and Merrimack. The site is currently developed with a one-story commercial building and was previously leased to Kitchen Clayton. The proposal will first operate as a ghost kitchen, focusing on catering and takeout orders. The proposal may expand in the future to accommodate a seating area at the front of the restaurant. Staff are of the opinion that the proposal meets the requirements contained in the regulations governing conditional uses for restaurants. The restaurant is compatible in size and use to buildings in the surrounding area. The proposed hours of operation and methods of delivery are consistent with other businesses in the area. Based on the information regarding the operation of the restaurant as provided by the applicant, staff are of the opinion that the business is compatible with surrounding uses. Staff recommend that this board recommend approval of the CUP to the Board of Aldermen as submitted.
Okay. It's a little interesting to do it without an applicant here, but I really had no problem with it. It seems like a similar use of the space. I did have some specific questions for the applicant, but we'll leave those alone tonight. So I would be in favor of the CUP. Bob?
I would too.
Helen?
Me too.
Jim?
It's fitting for the owner of a ghost kitchen not to show up to their hearing, but I have no problems either.
Nancy, do you want to testify on yours?
And I'm sure no one is online. Okay. Well, do we have a motion?
I move to adopt a staff recommendation approving the conditional use permit on the plans as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a discussion here before Ryan gets into it. So this was originally scheduled for the meeting that was postponed to the impacts of the tornado. But we do have an update of a lot of exciting work that Ryan's been doing with our downtown zoning. So just to kind of give a bigger picture of where we are, there are multiple things that have been delayed slightly with the timing of various meetings. The tornado also resulted in the cancellation of the last Board of Aldermen discussion session. So a few items will be pushed a little bit in this, but we have completed the executive summary, the liquor license updates, and work on an incentive policy with the Board of Aldermen. Here tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about the TOD code element that has expanded itself to be all of our really downtown zoning, and then also elements of just all three commercial zoning districts. As you're aware, we're very close to being able to start the actual text amendment process for lot coverage and stormwater regulations, and then also beginning on our neighborhood standards. So there's going to be a lot of comprehensive plan implementation meetings that are going to be held here over the course of this summer. So how did we get to where we are? Ryan's going to take us through. If you recall, he went over beginning with our transit-oriented development overlay districts. That was one of the first objectives and key results within the comprehensive plan that wanted us to look at how to utilize the tools of a transit-oriented development district to better regulate higher density zoning and mixed use zoning in proximity to our transit stations. And as Ryan outlined for you, we really found in applying those kind of best practices of TODs that we didn't need to call out those specific areas of downtown for a variety of reasons. So it allowed us to expand that analysis to all of our overlay districts and our commercial zoning districts. The result of that larger expanded analysis is that the Maryland Gateway Overlay District is doing a good job of supporting the pedestrian-friendly retail corridor and allows us to model some elements that have worked there while maintaining that overlay district. That is an overlay that covers the lower density C2 district. The Northeast Downtown Overlay District, which was adopted just a few years ago, really focuses on promoting ground floor retail and has some architectural, some form-based code style elements to it. However, it hasn't really impacted design. It still led to a lot of planned unit development requests and proposals moving forward. And so the overall direction that we decided to go is spending some time right-sizing our base zoning districts, especially for the commercial areas. And then building off of what Ryan will take you through is then how we'll formalize the next steps for our PUD ordinance moving forward. So I'll let Ryan walk you through what he's been doing.
Righty, so we're going to go over changes to all three of our commercial zoning districts. Some of those changes are common between all of them. So there's a lot of areas where we sort of reduced or consolidated language that was repeating either between those districts or between the overlays. So what you would commonly see is, say there's a specific area that's called out in the Maryland Gateway overlay for something. That would also be found in maybe the base zoning districts, or it might be in part of the base zoning districts, but not all of it. And so we just want to make sure that we're not repeating ourselves, or we're not inconsistently repeating ourselves, and we're being concise with it. We also removed some outdated sections that were block specific. So they might have called out, between X Street and Y Street, only something is allowed. And whatever happened between whenever that was put in place and now, there was some kind of developments that occurred that maybe made that regulation irrelevant. So we wanted to remove that language from there. We also reorganized how height was structured in some of these areas. So there's a height section in all these base zoning districts, but then you also might see height call outs within the permitted uses tables because they were often associated with the CUP. Those were reorganized almost similar to like a setback where we have a standard height and then there's encroachments that are permitted. So in the same way that a deck might be able to encroach into a rear yard, something like your stairwell or elevators or some kind of rooftop deck or church spire or something would have a permitted encroachment available. We also modified the residential to allow mixed use with a no minimum unit size. So right now, if somebody wants to do something mixed use in any commercial zoning district, they have to have a minimum of 750 square feet, and that's a common element that shows up in PUDs. Most mixed use nowadays, you're seeing those studios come in at something like, it can be 500 square feet or less sometimes. We're also wanting to update the names of these areas. Now, we're not married to these names if anybody has any strong opinions, but just kind of seeing what's out there right now, the nomenclature and the descriptions are very commercial specific coming out of the comprehensive plan. The broader goal, especially of downtown, is to incorporate more of those mixed-use neighborhood characteristics. So we're looking at, instead of neighborhood commercial, neighborhood mixed use, instead of general commercial, general mixed use, and so on. The changes specific to C1 and C2. So right now in C1, we've got a rear setback of 25 feet. That varies actually throughout the C1 area. So we said 10% with the 10-foot minimum was actually pretty on par with C2. We'll bring a lot more properties into compliance. But there is nothing that would prevent a property from having a greater setback, or if something came before this board with something that was out of character for an area, for you to request something alternative. Step back. So right now, this is only relevant for PUDs in C1 areas because C1 is limited in height. But if there was a PUD that went above that third floor, we'd be requiring a step back. There is a step back that is required at the moment, but it doesn't really have any teeth because in that section it just says the plan commission can kind of do away with it. But there's a lot of areas where we think a step back is very appropriate, especially for C1. So we want to make sure that that's a requirement that's pretty solid in there. And then surface parking. Right now, there's no surface parking permitted, but there are areas that have existing surface parking or where surface parking would be appropriate. So there's additional modifications in there to talk about surface parking, specifically on Clayton Road. Getting into C2, step backs, that 15-foot step back above the third floor it's the same language that's in C1, but we want to make sure that we're treating our C1 and C2 the same, because in a lot of places you have C1 or C2 backing up to the same types of zoning. So if there is a C2 property where somebody wants to build above that third floor, we want to make sure that they're providing step backs for those properties that have single family zoning. Additionally, we've modified the floor area ratio from 1.5 to 5. We'll get more into floor area ratio in a couple slides to explain why that occurred. So changes to high density commercial. Right now, it's a 10-foot step back. Well, it actually varies quite a bit throughout downtown. 10 feet may not be appropriate on a lot of blocks. So we're just saying what's average of the block, which is how it is in C1 and C2. And then multifamily residential uses. So right now, multifamily is permitted as part of mixed use, but there are areas where it may be appropriate to just have multifamily without mixed use in downtown. We'll get into that later as well. But we would want to have that with a minimum unit density. So we wouldn't say, oh, you could do multifamily mixed use and somebody shows up with 3 or 4 units. We want to make sure that it's appropriate for the size and scale of the properties. And then additionally, the ARB guidelines, there is an ARB guidelines section in HDC. We really haven't seen a lot of it because most of the time stuff comes in through PUDs, but that list had a lot of good content, but we've expanded on it. We've also put a lot of things from the Northeast Downtown Overlay. So when somebody comes to us with something new in HDC, there's a really good solid list of things for them to pull from, for us or you to reference, and really gives you guys some teeth to say, we don't want the boring glass box that a lot of folks show up with on the first round. So the Northeast Downtown Overlay has really evolved. There was a lot of good energy and effort that was put into that, a lot of good stuff that has come out of it, particularly with the retail components of it. So the evolution of that has been a retail emphasis area section of high density commercial. You'll see some overlap between where Northeast Downtown Overlay was and where that retail emphasis area is. And basically we want to co-locate things together. We want to have more teeth to say, okay, if you're going to be on this block of Central, there's a certain way that we want you to fit in with the character. So we've pulled stuff from NDO. There's some modifications to floor area ratio to sort of protect those smaller structures or keep things in conformance. But really it focuses on keeping a lot of that language in there. So looking at building height, right now, we do not have a maximum height except for in the Northeast Downtown Overlay, but we're keeping a portion of that in the area highlighted that you see for that map on the left. We want to keep a lower height that's available, but there is an incentive in there if you can go up to 7 stories or 90 feet, which is on par with C2, if you have a step back available. And then we also want a minimum height as well to keep those structures in character.
Just to annotate the slide so you know what the red dots there are, that is kind of identifying the depth of what that step back would be. So you can see how it plays out with the depth of the existing lot lines. That was a big piece when we were evaluating the downtown overlay district. We've seen the 2 parcels that have been developed. Well, one has been developed since that overlay was put in place, and that's the Beamiston place there on the top right image. And you can see that the existing lot sizes essentially force people into that larger parcel consolidation, large development scale, because they require these step backs and height restrictions. And so what we wanted to do was try to incorporate elements that would try and incentivize some people for putting more money into that scale that we see on North Central now with the smaller lots, so that they could still do something with their parcels to develop them and activate them without having to buy adjacent parcels and put them all together. But if they did put the parcels together, then there would be kind of a way of mitigating that form to be a little bit larger. So the red depth shows you the depth of what we've proposed for that step back of 20 feet.
Red represented 20 feet this way.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Depth. That would be at the 3rd floor and above if they wanted to increase the height.
Getting into floor area ratio. Floor area ratio is a way to regulate the size of building based on the relationship between the size of the lot and the total square footage. So if you had 100 square feet of lot and you had 100 square feet of building, floor area ratio of 1. If you had 200 square feet of building, floor area ratio of 2. And so what we wanted to do is we were making sure that our floor area ratio was right-sized and appropriate for those different zoning districts. Something that comes along regularly in the PUD process is that our floor area ratio definitely in C2 and HDC is too low for the structures that are already there. So I've listed here on this slide examples of some floor area ratios that are around. For example, so we've got 3 as our max, but something like 212 Clayton being 12.6. We are wanting to right size that to about 13, which would be very appropriate. Floor area ratio is funny in that sometimes it's not what you expect, but a floor area ratio of 13 is not going to allow somebody to build something that's exceeding what's already present. So it's going to right size it. Any questions about floor area ratio? So in the highlighted areas that you see here, we want to maintain the current floor area ratio of 3, just so that we're keeping a, we want to make sure that we're sort of protecting a lot of these older structures that have that classic retail feeling. If somebody was to come in and do something else, we want to make sure it's staying within character, or if they want to exceed that floor area ratio of 3, we want to make sure that there is that high standard of the PUD process to protect the character of the area.
These are already built.
Correct.
Well, there are pieces of it. Yes, there's little pockets that aren't. So at the intersection of Brentwood and Maryland, for example, there's some smaller buildings there currently. So that's kind of where the gap is. We didn't want to just call out specific parcels. The idea that really lends itself here that Ryan was making the point of is trying to protect the scale of this area and looking back through a lot of the discussions that happened during the Northeast Downtown Overlay, which was a process that Ryan and I were not involved in. So we had to kind of rely on what we could learn looking back. That combined with the feedback from the comprehensive plan, it was evident that there are a lot of people that want to kind of protect this area of downtown almost as our historic downtown, for lack of a better term. Similarly to the protections that we have in place for the north side of Maryland, where the 5-Star Burger is and some of those smaller shops. And so the idea here is to really make it pretty clear within our base zoning district, this is an area that is far more restricted, so that the people who own that property or wanted to develop it understand that we treat this very differently than we do other elements of the downtown area, with the hope that we can keep that scale alive.
So kind of tying it all together is the retail emphasis area. Ground floor in this area is going to have to, the ground floor is going to have to be 50% restaurant, retail, or personal care services. Pulling from the Northeast Downtown Overlay, those are our street activating uses. So you could have, some sort of commercial space that doesn't fall into that category. For example, a bank would not fall into that category, or ground floor office use would not fall into that category. It just won't contribute to that 50% area. And it's also going to have those specific design guidelines pulled from the Northeast Downtown Overlay. And basically, we wanted to make sure that this area matched up with where things were presently, which you can see on this map here. Something else that's called out on this map, that blue line, this is evolving a little bit, but that blue line is another concentration of retail that might be appropriate for kind of the way that mixed uses function now with PUDs, and that it just needs to have a mixed use component, but it may not necessarily need to be as strict as those retail emphasis areas. Yes, those are those storefront bays or entrances to existing retail.
Yeah, so those are doors. So some of those might be multiple doors into a larger retail space. Some of them are individual spaces. Yeah. And it doesn't have anything to do with the occupancy either. These are just the form of the building where it has that retail.
So do you have any questions about what we've heard?
Awful lot in it. I'm sure that,
Mhm.
Yeah, so I mean, there has to be a text amendment adopted for you to actually approve any of this. But it's really, I think it seems like a lot, but it's really only a few elements. So I don't know that it makes sense to say only get your feedback on height at one point and then only get your feedback on floor area ratio at another point. So the idea here was to walk you through the thought process that Ryan went through as he evaluated these different elements. And then we will return through a public hearing process once the actual regulations are drafted.
well, I don't think we've seen anything like this before. especially what we're looking at right now.
Yeah, we've shown you this diagram before. Maybe, I don't know if maybe we weren't present at that meeting, but we've kind of talked through some of these. So this is the first time we attached numbers to it for you guys, with the floor area ratio and the heights. But essentially what we're doing is, instead of having a base zoning district and then dividing our small downtown into 6 different overlay districts, we're right sizing that base zoning district and then only highlighting those specific areas with much more intention. So we can, so kind of what Ryan was saying, we want to make a code that has more weight or more teeth on the elements, the regulatory elements that are more important to the actual end result that we desire for that area compared to the other ones. Because right now it's a little bit difficult with our high density commercial district. We treat the property on North Central at the same starting point as we treat a property on South Central, even though the context of those areas and the goals for development of those areas are very different. And then the only thing that really comes into play to mitigate that is our Northeast Overlay District, which, as we've seen, hasn't really resulted in reinvestment at the scale of those properties. So that's the biggest goal here. So Ryan did a study, if you want to go back to the floor area ratio. What this allowed us to look at visually is across downtown, and then even on Maryland, where we introduced the C1 and C2 zoning districts, you can see the spread of our floor area ratios right now. So existing floor area ratio of 3 means everything that is that lighter orange color or yellow are the only buildings that comply with our current regulations. So this map kind of shows us 2 important things. One, we have a lot of buildings that exceed our maximum floor area ratio right now. But 2, we also have buildings that meet the floor area ratio that have significantly larger buildings on them. So for example, over by Ritz-Carlton there, that building is highlighted. That's in our 1 to 3. So I don't know off the top of my head where in that range it is, but it's in the it's in the 3.
I should clarify about some of the floor area ratios. There's going to be a couple errors on this map. Those are going to be lower than the actuals. Talking about that area, why it may look kind of funny is the way we pull data from the county assessor. Sometimes that total square footage doesn't show properly. I've had to go back and actually try to search through documents to figure out and total up what the floor area ratio is. So looking over there by the Ritz, I guarantee you that property, well, the Ritz might be, but
No, I think, well, it's also a lot larger of a lot.
Yeah.
That's the point there. So they actually, because the Ritz is one consolidated tower. So the lot sizes come into play a lot with how development is scaled throughout the downtown. So that's the point that I was trying to make compared to when you look at where our smaller lots are centered there again on North Central. So this allowed us to look at the right sizing of it and determine where we want to reinforce that smaller scale. So really that intersection of Central and Forsyth is where we want to reinforce that smaller scale, but then allow the natural development patterns of some of the higher density that we actually want and need for many reasons, because as we talked about for other things, the people, getting more people within our downtown is going to help support our goals for vibrancy and retail. So we want them places, but we don't necessarily want this piecemeal spotty development of the high density. So if we have redevelopment of parcels that are more along the southern half of downtown with that higher density residential, and we can do that while protecting the smaller scale on the north side.
Can I ask a question regarding that?
Yeah.
So by raising the floor area ratio from 3 to 13, how does that specifically protect those smaller buildings? Because in my mind, that would allow those areas to go larger and it seemed like that would incentivize knocking them down, but I definitely could be missing something there.
No, it would, except that this is where they were proposing to have that area called out as a separate district, essentially like a sub-district. So
Okay, do you have okay, so
yes, so here, the darker highlighted parcels would be the ones that we would maintain that existing 3. So right now, part of what makes it difficult and leads a lot of people to the PUD process is we have some elements of our base zoning that support really high density and, no maximum height. But then we have a 3 floor area ratio. And so what we have is a lot of people go through the PUD process, and then we have to try and figure out what our priorities are at this level for you all and for the Board of Aldermen. But what we want to do is give you the tools within that base zoning district to know where different priorities are more important. And so in this area here, where we want to prioritize that retail emphasis area that Ryan was talking about, that's where we have restrictions in place that set a different zoning threshold, a different development threshold for that scale. And then in the other areas, we don't. So if something does go through a PUD process, we're able to evaluate the benefits that are being proposed at that PUD based on the context of the area and the zoning.
So will the text amendment be our next step?
Yes, so we'll draft, Ryan's already begun that process of drafting it. So, gosh, I feel like I don't even have a great grasp on what month of time it is now. So after these last couple of weeks, but previously we did the presentation about the Unified Development Code and that framework of where we're headed. So this, the first step will be, since we're drafting the C1, C2 and high density commercial, we're going to redraft all of that in the package of the Unified Development Code. So the text amendment will come to you and it will repeal multiple areas of our code that cover commercial zoning and replace that with the sections that would be in the form of the Unified Development Code. And so that's why we wanted Ryan to provide you with this overview of generally where the numbers are so that we could get some feedback. Do you agree with the retail emphasis area concepts? Do we agree generally with increasing the floor area ratio and the height, the way that we're approaching that? So that when you get a text amendment before you in the future, which will likely take multiple iterations for you guys to look at, but you won't be trying to figure out what regulations have changed at the same time as trying to figure out where the regulations are located.
Well, once we go through the process, we approve the text amendment, Alderman approves it, when we implement it, will we see comparisons between the new and the previous, or will the previous just totally disappear?
Right, the previous will no longer be applicable. Unless there was a project that had already begun the application process before it's adopted. So that's kind of what this presentation is doing. And then when we come to you with the text amendment, Ryan will again kind of highlight the differences in what regulations are changing. But once the Board of Aldermen approves the text amendment for the new zoning, the previous zoning is no longer in effect. So it's still an option, but our goal is to our goal and part of doing this is to make PUDs less common because we want to right size the zoning, as Ryan was saying, so that people can we can easily facilitate development that meets the goals that we want because our code clearly outlines it for them and people can easily understand what they're doing. So we don't need to go through this PUD process of the back and forth and who values what and trying to, decide if the benefits are worth what we're wavering with our zoning regulations. So our overall goal from a staff's perspective is if we change our base zoning district to get less PUDs. However, we recognize that that is still a valuable tool to have at our disposal for some of the unique and special projects. And so it will still be a tool moving forward that we are going to modify on the tail of this process to make some changes to how the PUDs are evaluated based on how we're changing the base zoning district. But we aren't planning to remove the PUD from the tool bucket. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess my first question for you is in terms of modifying height and floor area ratio and introducing a retail emphasis area, are those concepts things that you generally support, or do you have immediate concerns about some element of it that you want us to expand upon further with you?
I think general support. I'm not sure if I captured everything but I think the general direction of specific areas, I really do like. The floor area ratio. That's understood.
Sure, maybe we could do, Ryan can kind of then come back with a little bit more of an explanation of exactly how floor area ratio impacts developments. Because I do think it's something, as you kind of mentioned, that is often misunderstood from, from designers who deal with it every day to zoning professionals to the general public in terms of what you're trying to do with the floor area ratio regulation and how that actually impacts development. So we can kind of walk through that a little bit more.
I think to me personally, like looking at your area that you have here, specifically on that one slide where you have the light gray and the dark gray, basically what you would be moving to 13 and keeping down at 3. Like my first thought is I want to go along Forsyth and see like exactly what those buildings are. And I guess by the discussion, like certainly someone could still come with a PUD and go higher than that. They wouldn't necessarily be capped at 3. Because I also just think it depends. Like I see maybe more value for something like that along Maryland where you're kind of stepping down to get to a more residential area. And while I very much agree with wanting to locate retail along that Forsyth corridor, I also would worry about limiting building size on some of those areas. With a building that would probably have ground floor retail anyway. And then on top of it, I think we also just have an issue because we have lots of space that's good for retail, but is prohibitively expensive to most retail applications.
Yeah, it's a good point. I think something that we can kind of also to expand on our thought process is walk you through how we've reflected back on developments that have happened over the last 5 to 10 years. Because a great example is Forsyth Point. There's a lot of benefits to how Forsyth Point has been developed. The office is obviously very successful for us right now, but sitting in the patio at Ivy, you're now in shade almost all the time. So it's a significantly colder area for a pedestrian to sit on because of the shadow impacts of what's happening directly across the street. And so that's kind of one of the elements of me personally focusing on Central with the lower height and the more clear step back requirement being maintained there is because if we got a similar building on the west side of Central where we have some open property becoming available, that would again then result in all shadow effects on the east side of Central. So that would drastically change that area. So that's the combination of the height, which is the shadow impact, with floor area ratio, which is more of the square footage density impacts. But I think that's I think it will be helpful for us to kind of walk through that together.
Yeah, I think the realistic examples probably help us. Some of this is, I'm not saying.
Yep.
But we,
Sure. Yep.
I think I think a lot of the kind of thrust behind it, I think is well intentioned. And I think when you listen to, let's just say, when you listen to a segment of the population complain as if like Clayton has lost all its charm and stuff like that, I think what you're targeting here is aimed at something along those lines, that we're basically not just erasing, because certainly even like Beamiston Place wiped out a lot of retail. Now it put it back, but it's also in a more homogeneous form. So I definitely see the positive intent there. It's also just with a lot of these things, I think all of us are, at least me personally, doing the mental math as far as like, okay, like what does, I know maybe what I see with all this, but what does a developer see when they see this? And like, does that result in something more beneficial than what's there now?
zone. I'm saying, how is this going to increase light? What we're doing is four tall buildings and lesson we've learned is nothing happens. They're only coming out for dinner, they go back in. And quality is still, don't blame you guys, I mean, you guys do it, you'll. Side. Whatever it is.
Anything that will get us density, we need people. And even if they, drive into the garage and take the elevator up to their office, it's still more people coming in and there's the need for them to eat. They may not have a restaurant or a deli or something in their office building. That puts them out on the street. And I think what you're doing, simplifying the zoning, is wonderful for people looking at zoning and trying to sort it out. But then the intent behind it to get the density, I think is great with the floor area ratio, the whole thing. And you're also acknowledging like the Maryland shops, that is special. There's something that makes that work because parking is horrendous there. But it works. It's crowded. People like it. So I think you've done a phenomenal job. So keep it up.
Yeah, so I guess the next thing that we can do is put together some information that we can share with you in advance of the next discussion, so you can kind of think through it a little bit more now that you've seen the bigger picture of where we're headed. And then we'll walk through some of these items in a little bit more of a guided discussion to help with that feedback element before we come to you with the actual drafted text for the district. That makes. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate the overview tonight. And
Yes, we worked a lot of hours. Ryan as well, was kind of doing a lot of our behind the scenes mapping. So that's something that I think was a very successful and important tool for us to get to the recovery that we're in, that I think is something that other communities in our discussions weren't utilizing the same way we were. And so we're all learning from it. But yes, it was a very unique experience to be a part of, not one that you really want to, but also had a lot of positives that came out of it in terms of how the staff worked together. So Ryan and I worked extremely closely with fire department staff, with our public works staff, our parks staff. So we were doing all of the kind of an analysis spatially of where we're targeting debris removal, where the damage occurred, what level of damage, where the hazards are, where the infrastructure, all that sort of stuff. And that will continue. So it's been very interesting to be a part of. But yes, Ryan, along with myself and others, were here on all weekend, and that's part of it.
I've ever seen city government. Light out and come on for me. Wires, electric wires, the pole.
Yeah.
Clearing up, unknown for government to me.
Yeah, it was interesting. We had the role of leading the FEMA and SEMA discussions, which was another interesting experience that you read about or you take, little webinars about from a planner's perspective. But that was the first time I've actually worked directly with FEMA. And they were kind of in shock at how efficiently and quickly we were able to get back to some sense of normalcy in certain areas. So it was a complete effort. I mean, the implementation of everybody that was on the street in the bucket trucks or guiding the trucks that came in from contractors or other people, that was the big work, and they did a great job. But it will be an interesting process for us to reflect back on. We were able to do a lot to show FEMA where we were, which was important because we did such a good job of cleaning up that we wanted to make sure that they knew how much damage had really occurred for everybody. So that was interesting. We're creating some story maps and other elements that we'll be able to share with the public to kind of continue to reflect so that we can look on how to improve and what took place, and hopefully continue to get some interaction with SEMA and FEMA, and hopefully get some assistance from them as this moves forward. Yeah. Yeah. I know now, yeah, it was kind of one of those that you could almost start to sigh relief a little bit this week, except then not really, because there are all the things that we didn't do for the last couple weeks.
I'm gonna say today was the most normal day I've had, or at least I thought, until I was like, oh gosh, there's like 20 items on this agenda and I need to re-review all of them.
Yeah.
Because 2 weeks just been staring at maps.
Yeah, but some point when we have a lighter agenda, we can kind of show you all the mapping and other things that Ryan's been doing. Yeah.
Interesting to see that.
I know, it really won't, but I will plug, since we're on there, there's a form available online if you guys haven't been made aware of it yet, through the website, where people can report private property damage. That's a big one to continue to try and make our case to FEMA for assistance, individual assistance, which would go to homeowners if they qualified through that, because a big part of what we've been finding over the last few days with our last few weeks, is that once trees are removed, the more extent of the damage is revealed as people are investigating the rear areas of their property. We didn't send inspectors to walk the backs of every home unless there was evidence of a significant damage that we were really concerned about the safety of the structure. So this tool, you can kind of use, you can upload pictures, an address, a description of the damage, and we're tracking that data and continuing to share it with FEMA, but also it allows us to help know where we might need to send an inspector still to look at things or to get things corrected. So I would encourage you and your neighbors to use that tool moving forward.
And we're very lucky to have the leadership that you provide, as well as all the other departments.
Yeah.
And how it's worked together during.
Yep.
It's a
Sure.
pleasure.
Yeah.
As always, come back and visit. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know if, were you here for an item or would you like to address the board for anything?
No, I'm not, I'm a reporter, actually.
Oh. Yes, that was that was going to be on the canceled agenda. We had to re-advertise for the public hearing because that meeting didn't happen. Yep. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.